Good Saturday evening, everybody. Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw, back with you. And I gotta apologize for earlier this afternoon. My audio and video kind of checked me when I wasn't expecting it. So now that I've got everything straight, I figured instead of waiting until Monday, like I had promised in the last video, I'm gonna go ahead and finish everything up now. Alright, so to pick up from where I left off, I believe the last story I was doing was had a lot to do with pro baseball players, minor leaguers, former and current, being charged with insider trading of Del Taco stock. Give me a moment to bring that screen up for you, and I can go ahead and pick up from where I left off. There we go. And again, guys, my apologies for earlier. Yeah, we found out that four minor leaguers were profiting nearly $190,000 after being tipped off on Del Taco's 2021 merger with Jack in the Box. So the last thing I mentioned was a quote from FBI Special Agent Stacey Moy, who said in a statement, "Insider trading directly affects the integrity of our economy. We will continue to work with our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners to ensure people who intentionally undermine and threaten our economy will be brought to justice." Honestly, this is something that, if I remember right, Martha Stewart was charged with something like this back in the day. Only thing I forget what she was busted for, but she spent a good time in jail for that. So these guys, I'm expecting nothing less. Just because they're baseball players shouldn't mean that they should serve any less of a sentence. Okay. As I would have said earlier, moving onward, we're gonna go back to Chad Daybell because because his trial's coming up on Monday. And Mr. Daybell has got a gag order issued before his trial starting Monday. So I'm gonna go ahead and send you over to Court TV for briefing.
We're moving closer to trial in the case against Doomsday Prophet Chad Daybell.
Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty against him.
Investigators recovered the remains of Chad Daybell's residence.
His wife, Lori Daybell, has already been convicted.
Now, will her husband end up with the same fate?
It's so hard to know where the truth ends.
It's the Doomsday Prophet, Chad Daybell, on trial.
I know I've been told for years that Sammy passed away at a young age. I have no idea that Lori would be able to be my wife. I just knew that my wife had two segments. And I know Tammy has a special mission. She's with my kids. She visited them. There's so much memory that you just have to have faith. And this is not some sort of master plan. There's no way I could ever come up with this.
That's Chad Daybell. Now, you listen to that. Like, I always knew my wife would die at a young age, that my life had two segments. He's either a prophet or he's a murderer who planned something. I think those are the only two choices, the only things you can argue. But that statement that he made, I knew she was going to die young. Well, how do you know? Well, I'm a prophet. Okay. or I'm planning her murder. Because right after Tammy dies, he marries Lori, who he'd already been having an affair with. There's Chad in court. 3 deaths we're talking about here. You've got, of course, little JJ, and that when he went missing, that's when this whole case started. His sister, Tylee, and then you've got Tammy Daybell, who died, was buried, and then after the JJ and Tylee deaths became apparent and something rotten was happening, Tammy's body was exhumed, and then she became known as a murder victim as well. So this trial is going to be much different than Lori's trial. Number one, you're going to see it because there's cameras inside the courtroom. Number two, Chad Daybell's not going to sit back and not allow his attorneys to actually try the case. John Pryor is the attorney. He's really good. He's really aggressive. And Don Nelson from Scripps News Boise spoke to him as he prepares for this huge case.
I'm senior reporter Don Nelson at the Ada County Courthouse in Boise, Idaho. The trial of Chad Daybell is expected to last anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks. If convicted, Daybell could face the death penalty. I sat down with an exclusive interview with Daybell's attorney, John Pryor, ahead of the proceedings.
Attorney John Pryor has been working on the Chad Daybell case for almost 4 years. And you might wonder how Pryor was thrust into the national spotlight.
All I can say is that he reached out to me, and that's how it started. And at this point, we're ready to go forward, and he wants to tell his story.
That story will start next week with jury selection in a trial that's expected to last anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks. And if you think Pryor has assembled a team to take on this high-profile case, think again.
Well, unfortunately, John, I'm doing this myself. So that makes things a little challenging, but fortunately I've had about 3 years and 10 months to go through all the evidence, to sort of look at what I want to present to the jury, and I'm looking forward to my opportunity to do that.
I asked Pryor, who attended Lori Ballo Daybell's trial on a regular basis, if he learned anything that he could use in Chad Daybell's case.
Did I learn a lot of new things? Oh, absolutely. Did I see what the prosecutor intends to do? Yes. Was it a surprise? No.
I was also curious whether Lori could be called to the stand.
It's possible. It's always possible. Anybody who's connected to a case could be called. And I don't want to specify, I want to be clear. I'm not telling you that I am or that the state is or anybody else is. But anybody can be called. If you have an involvement in this case, potentially you could become a witness in this case.
The trial hasn't started yet, but John Pryor is grateful for one thing.
I'm grateful that Judge Boyce decided to move the trial over to Ada County. One of the main reasons I'm grateful is I know the folks in Ada County. I've spent better than half my life living here.
And for the next few months, most of that time will be spent at the Ada County Courthouse.
In Boise, Idaho, I'm senior reporter Don Nelson. Vinny, back to you.
There you go. It's all happening. It begins Monday. Jury selection, death penalty case, Idaho versus Chad Daybell, the so-called doomsday prophet. Let's bring back our think tank, Ann Bremner, Rick King, Michael Sterling. All right, Ann. He's doing it by himself. He's going to take on a team of prosecutors here. You know, what do you think of that approach, number one? And number two, how different do you expect this trial to be?
Well, first of all, I thought the George Floyd case, because remember the defense attorney was standing alone against how many prosecutors? 7, 10, 12. And look how that turned out. I mean, we know what the evidence was, but you don't just stand, it's not a David versus Goliath. I mean, you can't do that. And secondly, with tech these days, I don't know about this lawyer, but I should have trouble with tech and all the just myriad of exhibits and everything else you need in a case like this. And all of the evidence you have to go through, you need some help. So, you know, bullet for him if he's going to do it. I'd say, it's going to be very difficult for him. And I think this case will be a lot different. I think, probably Lori was just a very bizarre case. We're going to see here fight for this man's life. I mean, for the death penalty. She was because the prosecutors were late in discovery, so taken off the table. This is a real win. If they get that if they prevail in the death case. That's what I think. Up until then, I just don't think there's a real chance in pro.
Let me ask you, Rick, how does he separate himself from Lori? and Alex Cox. Like the three of them seem to be intertwined to a certain extent. And I've got to think the only way that you have a chance of a jury, looking at you is to somehow distinguish between Chad, the Doomsday Prophet, and the Doomsday Cult Killer, Lori, and her dead brother, Alex.
I mean, I think that's the key to the case, and I think you're right. But what has to happen is he has to accentuate that relationship between Lori and Alex and show how kind of bizarre that relationship was, and point out those really crazy things that happened. The death of Lori's first husband and the death of her brother, and just everything. The comments about the weird sexual relationship between Lori and her brother. He has to bring all of those things out and separate himself as an observer of that and not participant. And I think if you can make that distinction and you can pull yourself back and become an observer of these weird things that are happening between Lori and her brother, you put yourself as an outsider, and I think you have a chance.
Michael Sterling, we only have like 15 seconds here. Let me ask you, this is a man who's a prophet who had followers. Any chance he gets on the stand and picks up 12 more followers in that jury box?
There's a chance he gets on the stand. I don't know how many followers he'll pick up, Vinny.
And in regard to the gag order, Judge Stephen Boyce has issued a temporary non-dissemination order, commonly referred to as a gag order, in the case of Chad Daybell until attorneys begin presenting cases in court. The order was filed on Thursday, which this coming days after Scripps News Boise interviewed defense attorney John Pryor. So bottom line, nothing can be said outside of the presence of the courtroom and everybody in it on the defense's part, especially that part of Chad Daybell. And as they've made mention, of course, 1, the trial starts Monday with jury selection, and 2, if Chad Daybell is found guilty, he could face the death penalty. Hold on, guys. This one's gonna get bumpy. Now another Alex Murdaugh update. Now, I'm gonna let you guys take this for what you will. Take this for what you will. They're saying that the reason that Alex Murdaugh failed his lie detector test is because of mention of the man who admittedly killed a missing young lady in a different case. Get a good look and listen to this.
Welcome back. If you remember last night on this program, we talked about how Alex Murdaugh had failed a polygraph, and it was going to perhaps cause a huge problem with his federal plea deal, because he needed to be honest and cooperate with federal investigators. But they're claiming he failed the polygraph and was lying about some of the crimes, and they are very concerned because there's $6 million that's unaccounted for. This would put in jeopardy his plea deal and perhaps put him in federal prison for so long that even if he got his murder conviction overturned, he would never, ever, 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 ever have the chance to see the light of day. Well, tonight the defense has struck back, and they said that this examiner was asking a lot of odd questions and talking about that he had just administered a lie detector on famed killer Jurgen Vandersloot. So they're saying that this guy gave an unfair test, and the questions were all over the place. They didn't make sense, and he was talking about Jurgen Vandersloot. So we'll see what the judge does with it. It's all happening on Monday.
Sorry about that. I was a little caught up. But all I can say is this does spell a lot of trouble for Alex Murdaugh, and if that's the case, that plea deal is going right off the table. And let's just say the time that he's spending in prison now is gonna be a little bit of an addition to go along with it. All right. Next up. This one may have surprised a lot of people, especially on social media.
Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at our big board, and you know, it's kind of sad. Gypsy Rose Blanchard, you know her. She was a victim of her mother's abuse, but ended up serving time for the murder of her mother. She's out. She got married, and now her and her husband have officially announced that they are splitting. Here's Gypsy Rose when she spoke to CNN after she was released from prison, talking about what life was going to be like.
I would tell her that I'm sorry and I forgive her. I'm coming to a place of forgiveness. It's going to take time. I would say that I understand. I see her. I see her in the way that she was not an evil woman. She was not a monster. She was just a sick woman, and she would have needed a lot of mental health care. I see her for who she is now, or who she was. Yes, I do feel like the system failed me. I realize that there are resources and things that are put in place to protect kids from going through what I went through, and unfortunately I just fell through the cracks of all of it.
And Gypsy Rose also deleted all of her social media, and I hope that's a good way for her to get some time, and it's going to be a tough road. It's going to be a long, tough road, but we wish her the best. I know things are a little rough right now.
Now, I know a lot of you when it first came out that she was being released from prison. A lot of you had zero sympathy for all that she went through. Some actually did. But now that this has come out, and I'm looking at a quote from her saying, "People have been asking what is going on in my life. Unfortunately, my husband and I are going through a separation, and I moved in with my parents' home down the bayou. I have the support of my family and friends to help guide me through this. I am learning to listen to my heart. Right now, I need time to let myself find who I am." I'll say that I have a little bit of sympathy for Gypsy Rose, and no matter what becomes of her now, I do hope she finds exactly just who she really is. All right, now we're going to the Riley Strain case. No longer a missing person. His body was recovered, and now the family is asking for a second autopsy.
Well, we want to bring you an update on a tragic case that we've been following here at Court TV, the disappearance of college student Riley Strain. Now, Strain had been missing since March 8th after reportedly getting kicked out of a bar in downtown Nashville. He was a student at the University of Missouri and was in Nashville visiting fraternity friends. Now, video surveillance caught Strain walking alone the night he went missing away from the bar, and his bank card was eventually found near the banks of the Cumberland River. Well, Strain was eventually found and identified by police on March 22nd in that river, still wearing the same shirt and watch that he had the night that he went missing. But new questions have arisen as officials confirmed that while he was wearing a shirt and watch, he was missing his pants and cowboy boots. Reporter Nick Barris with Scripps News Tennessee brings us up to date on the latest.
A friend of Riley Strain's family says that they ordered a second autopsy, which reached the same basic conclusions as Metro's. But he says the Strain family also has questions about the condition of Riley's body when it was pulled from the river. A dock worker spotted the body downriver from downtown Nashville where Riley was last seen. Police Chief John Drake confirmed the identity.
Mr. Strain still had the shirt on that he was wearing, still had the watch.
But News Channel 5 has learned Riley's body was found without his jeans or cowboy boots. Riley certainly was fully clothed in the security video the night he disappeared, but when he was pulled from the river 2 weeks later, from the waist down, only his boxer shorts and socks remained.
It is unusual. Normally, if you fall in the river, it's very difficult to get your pants off.
Dr. Bill Bass, now retired, is the founder of the University of Tennessee's famed Body Farm and one of the foremost experts on body decomposition in the world. We asked him about the missing pants and boots. Dr. Bass says it's possible but unlikely they just came off in the river current.
No, they would not come off by themselves.
Dr. Bass says debris could have snagged the clothing or...
I would say that somebody took them off. If you do research on this, which is very difficult because you got to kill a person to do it, but it's difficult to get your pants off. It's difficult when you're alive to get your pants off.
We did speak with Riley's stepdad, Chris, who says he does not right now want to comment on the friend's interview because the family is preparing for Riley's funeral on Friday. But he did say that they will have, quote, big things to share, unquote, next week. Nick Barris, News Channel 5.
All right, joining us to discuss, Deputy Chief of Investigations for Gwinnett County, Georgia, Curtis Clemens, and criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, Rob Corbett. Rob, I'll start with you. I want to get your thoughts on this. I just want to add to this that we do know he was found 8 miles down the river. He was missing for 2 weeks. So I don't know if that plays into the idea of during that time, somehow in that river with the current, could have gotten caught on a branch or something, pulling his pants off, but boots and pants as well. It all seems rather curious to me.
Yeah, I agree. It is a tragic and unfortunate incident. I wouldn't think that the pants and boots came off sometime while the body was in the river. Seems more likely that that would have occurred probably before he went into the river. And the question now remains, is it going to be foul play or is it just a tragic, unfortunate accident that he took his pants off and then went in the river? But I think more needs to be discovered, probably an additional thing. The family's waiting on the final autopsy report or the second autopsy report, and perhaps that could shed more light on this.
Yeah, so now what we know, Curtis, is that there was no blunt force trauma, at least according to police. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what to believe now. The police were very crafty in that first statement saying, oh, no signs of foul play. He had his watch on, he had his shirt on, leaving out the fact that he didn't have pants and boots. You know what I mean? And I guess the family feels the same way. They thought it was necessary for them to get a second autopsy done. We don't know the results of either of them yet. Your thoughts on whether, number one, there was foul play. I want to ask you about why the police wouldn't be more forthcoming with the details.
Well, there's several reasons. One, I think that there was foul play. That's my stance. I mean, I think something happened to him. Maybe he was robbed. You have a watch that was still there. A smart person doesn't know anything about Apple Watches. They can be tracked. They can be traced. So you leave that alone. You take the boots. Maybe you like the boots, but to get to those boots, you got to, get those clothes off of them. So that's one issue. Now, why the police responded the way they do, unfortunately or fortunately, sometimes law enforcement is going to rely heavily on the results from the medical examiner when they examine the body. Again, we said there's been no blunt force trauma to the body, no other visible injuries. So the tendency is to go, well, we have no signs of foul play right here. So that is what law enforcement is dealing with. They're looking for something with the help of the medical examiner to make a case. At this point, they don't have enough. There needs to be further investigation.
Yeah, Rob Corbett, we're also sort of hearing, and again, I don't want to put this out there as fact because we do not and have not been able to confirm this, the fact that there might be either no water in his lungs or little water in his lungs. Now, if the police know this and say there's no foul play, I don't see how they could come to that conclusion. So, I'm not sure where that information is coming from. Again, we have not been able to verify it, but that would tell us a lot, would it not?
Well, definitely. If there's no water or very little water in his lungs, then that would lead one to the conclusion that he did not drown, and then he ends up in the river by some other means. And at this point, with law enforcement sort of withholding information, I can kind of see that if it's still in terms of an active investigation and not releasing everything all at once, or if as more information comes in, they have to try to weigh it out and see what's going to be the most viable route to go. But at this point, there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and further investigation is definitely needed.
Yeah, and so, Curtis, you had a theory, maybe somebody liked the boots that he had on. What we know is that the bank card was found on the banks of the river. That kind of clued them that something might be in the river. No wallet found. And again, the pants off, boots gone. All of those things, I mean, what scenario do you see? You think there was foul play? Maybe a robbery? They took his pants off, make it easy for them to sort of get what they need and get away. They did leave the bank card, which I guess would have been valuable in some way. I don't know. Is that how you think this might have went down?
My theory, yes, exactly. I think this was a robbery. Again, you make him take off his pants. You want to embarrass him so he's not going to run out in public. Take off his pants. We like those boots. Take those boots. Take the wallet. You don't want the credit cards. You don't want the bank cards. You just want the cash, and it's gone. Just take the money, take that, send him on his way, and the robbery is complete.
I still got an issue with his frat brothers letting him leave the bar drunk like that without with him. One of them walked down with him, then went back up.
And just left him.
Gotta stay with your brother, man. Gotta stay with your brother.
Michael Ayala, you're not the only one that has that issue, but we'll just have to wait and see what comes of the second autopsy. And we have an update on Caleb Harris. We're still looking for that young man. Let's see. Police share the timeline of the night Texas A&M Corpus Christi student Caleb Harris went missing in a public call out for help solving the case. Let me pull something up real quick before I continue the article. Okay. Couldn't find what I was looking for, but I'm going to go ahead and continue to this point. The Corpus Christi Police Department also shared details of the investigation, including efforts to clear suspects, and a rare behind-the-scenes glimpse into law enforcement's painstaking efforts to solve the mystery of Harris's disappearance. According to CCPD, Harris's roommates in off-campus housing last saw him after 2 a.m. on March 4th, when he said he was staying up to order food through Uber Eats. Later that morning at 11 a.m., one of his roommates found the Uber Eats order outside their door and Harris's pickup truck parked in front of the apartment. His wallet and keys were in the apartment, but there was no sign of Harris or his cell phone. Caleb's roommates, who described him as a homebody and a creature of habit, immediately became alarmed by Caleb's absence. After searching for Caleb alone for a short time, the roommates called the CCPD to report Harris missing. Police said no signs of a struggle or a hit and run were found in the apartment complex or the surrounding area. A search of the apartment yielded no evidence of a struggle, violent act, or any signs that the apartment had been recently deep cleaned. Firearms and fishing gear, including waders, that belonged to Caleb were found in the apartment along with his laptop, which was turned over to CCPD's forensic examiners. More than 50 businesses and private residences were checked for video. Video was retrieved from 27 different locations, including city-owned traffic cameras. Investigators continue to search for additional sources. Detectives have written 16 electronic search warrants, submitted over 70 preservation requests, and issued 14 subpoenas for electronic data related to this investigation. And forensic computer examiners have already reviewed over 600 gigabytes of electronic data and continue to pore over data as it arrives on almost a daily basis. Caleb Harris's family has offered a $25,000 reward for information, and his father has appeared on local news and News Nation several times. I am still looking for a missing persons flyer for Caleb Harris. Let's see. Hang on, guys. I'm still looking for that. Maybe this would help if I went ahead and looked under images like I should. Alright, this will help me. Yes. Okay. Alright, let me go ahead and share this with you. Alright, here it is. Remember, we told you that there was a $25,000 reward for the information leading to the whereabouts of Caleb Harris, anyone. He's described as a male standing 5 feet 11 inches tall, weighed around 180 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. He doesn't have his wallet or vehicle with him. If you have any information regarding Caleb Harris's whereabouts, you are urged to contact the Corpus Christi Police Department at 361-866-2840. 361-866-2840 or 361-866-2600. 361-866-2600. All you tipsters can also get in contact with the with University Police at 361-825-4444. 361-825-4444. All right. But whatever you do, as I always say, if you see something, say something. Let's pour in every bit of information we can pour into to bring Caleb home safe. All right. Now we go back to the Rush shooting case. And Hannah Gutierrez is been denied a new trial, and she's going to stay behind bars until her sentencing on April 15th.
All right, morning.
The matter I'm calling is D1010-2023-40, State of New Mexico versus Hannah Gutierrez. Party state your name.
Carrie Morrissey on behalf of the State of New Mexico. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Jason Bowles from Ms. Gutierrez Reed.
Good morning.
And good morning, Your Honor. Monica Barreras, also present for Ms. Gutierrez Reed, who appears in custody. Mr. Bowles will be handling the hearing this morning.
All right. Go ahead.
Your Honor, thank you. Judge, I wanted to touch on some principles in the Taylor opinion this morning and also the Godoy case in light of the jury instructions provided at this trial. Judge, at the time of trial, none of us had the benefit of the Taylor opinion, which, as this court knows, came out after the jury verdict. So I first want to talk about the jury instructions given, which this court is aware. There was a jury instruction given in 12A that gave the jury two alternatives connected by an and/or connector, and those two alternatives were the alternative theories for involuntary manslaughter that the state had advanced at trial. So the instructions provided that the jury could find Ms. Gutierrez Reed guilty under either alternative theory connected by an and/or. Following the jury verdict, the Taylor opinion came out, and there's an important several principles in the Taylor opinion, and we cited that in the reply. The first one I want to read is from paragraph 9 of that opinion, which states that specifically defendants argue that the instructions listing the elements of essential conduct with an and/or conjunction provided for alternative ways for the jury to find the defendants committed child abuse without requiring the jury to unanimously agree on any of those alternatives. Applying a de novo standard of review, we agree with defendants. And Judge, then I want to go down to paragraph 16, which I've excerpted, where the court indicates that this violated our teaching in the Consul opinion, 2014 NMSC 030, that when two or more different or inconsistent acts or courses of conduct are advanced by the state as alternative theories as to how a child's injuries occurred, then the jury must make an informed and unanimous decision guided by separate instructions as to the culpable act the defendant committed and for which he is being punished. And so, Your Honor, our argument under that principle is that we had two different acts in this case. The first act being that she loaded a live round into a gun that was supposed to have inert ammunition. And the second act was that she did not allegedly perform an adequate safety inspection of that firearm. Based on those two paragraphs in Taylor, there should have been separate instructions, and there should have been the requirement that the jury unanimously find which act it was, which theory it was, that they said she committed. The problem with the verdict under Taylor that we have at this point is we don't know which act the jury may have found unanimously, or whether it was unanimous. And the other problem is that the special prosecutor specifically argued in closing that the jurors are able to find 6 can find one act and 6 can find another, so there was no requirement that there be unanimity. That is precisely what Taylor is saying in paragraphs 9 and 16, that there has to be a finding of unanimity on that particular theory. Now, in Taylor, there were 4 alternatives, and so the court discussed there were 4 alternatives, and it was more confusing with the use of and/or when there were more than 2. That court did involve 4 alternatives. 2 of those alternatives involved CYFD policies, which they said could not be a legally adequate basis to convict. However, that was not the entire holding Justice Vigil announced, which was that any time, and they criticized the use of and/or and said courts should consider abandoning the use of that instruction altogether. What they said is any time you have 2 or more, going back to Consul, that there should be separate instructions to guide the jury to a unanimous decision. Now, that is how Justice Vigil announced Taylor in the Supreme Court. The Godoy opinion was not overruled in Taylor. Now, the court did discuss Godoy being a fundamental error review, because in that case there was not a specific preservation. The state in their response indicated that our only objection at trial to the instructions was the use of the word reckless as opposed to negligent. But as we cited in our reply, and we had to get the trial tape to delineate that was not our only objection. In fact, Ms. Pereira specifically made the unanimity objection, and it's laid out in our reply. Godoy involved a case where there were trafficking charge and a step-down possession charge for cocaine. So there in Godoy, the court said on fundamental error review, we don't find an issue with the jury not being given separate instructions, because there's a step-down instruction, and we had one in this case. The step-down instruction is very detailed and explains to the jury, if you don't find the lead charge, then you go to the next step-down. So in that case, on a fundamental error review, the court said the jury didn't need any additional guidance because they must have found cocaine. So they found a possession charge in Godoy, but they didn't find the trafficking. But they did have language in that case where there are different acts, there are different ways in which crime can be committed. That's when, Your Honor, we are in this case, which Taylor talked about, when there's separate theories and those have to be unanimous. So that's why I submit to the court that Godoy is not applicable, that the principle of Taylor is applicable, that we need a unanimous verdict on the specific act. And so, Judge, I submit because of that, and none of us had the Taylor opinion at the time, but now that we do, I think this is a reason that Ms. Gutierrez-Reed should be entitled to a new trial with instructions that are different, that follow Taylor and they track Taylor's language, requiring a unanimous verdict on the specific act that she alleged to have committed.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison.
Your Honor, in response, first I want to point out that the defense's initial motion was 2 pages long. So we did our very best to respond and kind of try to anticipate what we would be seeing in their reply. If certainly I would invite the court, if the court is remotely inclined to grant this, to request additional briefing, because to a certain degree I feel like we got a little bit cheated out of an opportunity to fully respond, because the initial motion was so threadbare. I've never seen a motion for a new trial that was 2 pages. So having said that, in response to Mr. Bowles' argument, I want to point the court to, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. I want to point the court to Taylor paragraph 14, where the court in Taylor indicates, I'm just going to read it for the record if that's okay. Using and or to separate 2 terms such as A and or B invites the reader to choose only A, only B, or both A and B. Thus, the reader is presented with only 3 options when and or is used to separate 2 terms. That's exactly what happened in Ms. Gutierrez's case. Is exactly what Taylor described in that very short paragraph. Taylor then goes on to discuss the very complicated scenario that happened in the Taylor case in terms of the jury instructions. So the court goes on and says, however, opposed to and or adding an additional proposition C can leave the reader guessing whether and or is intended to be placed between all propositions or only some of the propositions. And that was really the problem in Taylor. The problem in Taylor was they went beyond and or separating 2 alternatives, and they had 4 alternatives. And in addition to that, the acts that were outlined in those alternatives were just legally insufficient to support a conviction For example, if a daycare worker, a child care worker doesn't follow CYFD policies or training, that in and of itself is not enough to satisfy the elements of the offense of that child abuse charge. So we certainly don't have that element in this case. In this case, we had two alternatives in 12A for the jury to consider, both of which were absolutely sufficient for involuntary manslaughter. It's my recollection that in closing, what I invited the jury to do, and this is a little bit different than what Mr. Bowles is suggesting to the court, what I explained to the court is you've got 12 and 12A. And between instruction 12 and 12A, there's unanimity is not required. I don't believe that I suggested to the jury that the options within 12A did not require unanimity. That's my recollection of my closing. I can see Mr. Bowles shaking his head. We haven't had the reason that when Mr. Lewis filed his response and he indicated that the defense didn't object to this was because he didn't have the benefit of the audio and the transcript. And that's one of my concerns is the defendant had the benefit of the audio and the transcript when they filed their initial 2-page motion, but they certainly haven't shared it with us. So I'm happy to provide additional briefing on this if the court thinks that that's necessary. In terms of the unanimity issue and the Godoy case, Taylor actually, as Mr. Bowles pointed out, upholds Godoy and the argument that, or the principle that unanimity is not required when there are two alternatives. And in this case, we had two alternatives, that being 12 and 12A. So while I appreciate the fact that the Taylor case may give guidance in the future to how to properly construct jury instructions that have and or separators, the Taylor case actually has language that specifically supports what we did in this trial, there only being two options in 12A separated by and or. So I'm a little confused about what the defense thinks the strength of their argument is, because when you read paragraph 14, Taylor actually is supportive of the way that we did it in Ms. Gutierrez's case. So for those reasons, we would object and we would ask the court to deny defendant's motion. And if the court has any specific questions for me or any concerns, I'm happy to address those.
Thank you. Reply.
Yes, Judge. First, Judge, the opinion in Taylor does say in paragraph 9 and 16, it doesn't limit that language to 4 propositions. The specific language in 9 and 16 is the console case when 2 or more different or inconsistent acts. That's specifically stated. And that's what Justice Vigil is saying in Taylor, is that the unanimity principle is the problem. The unanimity principle as to which different act. So it doesn't matter if it's 4 or 6 or 8 or 2. It's the idea that under our Constitution there has to be a unanimous verdict as to the specific act. That is the issue that Taylor is stating. Now, I agree that Ms. Morrissey is correct in 14 that they talk about 2 or more, A or B and C. Now, the reason why they were going into that is because they were emphasizing that here we not only have 2, we have 4, which made it more confusing. So it was more confusing in Taylor under those specific alternatives, but it didn't change the principle they're announcing, which is that when 2 or more, it has to be unanimous and it has to be separated. And Ms. Morris, it is hard to remember exact language, but she specifically said in closing, 6 of you can find one act and 6 in another, and we have those tapes. All of us, can request those tapes, so we can get that transcribed if the court wants that, and we can make that part of the record. But the problem is this jury was invited to find a non-unanimous act and just conglomerate them. That's the problem that Taylor announced.
All right, thank you, counsel. So I do agree that your motion was very sparse, and it just focused, your motion for a new trial was very sparse, and it just focused on the and/or, and because we had a jury instruction in and/or, Ms. Gutierrez was entitled to a new trial. It wasn't until your reply where you fleshed out issues that you had already stated regarding the unanimity aspect of things. I have read Taylor, I've read Gaudet, I've read Consul, I've read very many cases. I'm very aware of what occurred at trial. I'm very aware of the discussions that occurred on regarding the jury instructions. And I am denying your motion, Mr. Bowles, because I do not think that Taylor requires a new trial. In this case, I think that the issues in this case, jury instruction in this case, are distinguishable from what happened in Taylor. I'm not going to, I'm going to provide a written order outlining my reasons so that there's no misstatements of what I'm, to make an oral determination. So I'm going to do a written order. But I wanted to let you know that I'm denying your motion for a new trial. I will put it in an order. You should get that on Monday. And we are staying the course on the sentencing.
Yes, Your Honor, and I had one additional request of the court in my motion, which was, and if the court were to address this at sentencing or to address it now, which was to consider release of Ms. Gutierrez-Reed pending an appeal and a writ that we would take for guidance from the appeals court and the Supreme Court. And I just wanted to add to that, she didn't have any violations pending trial. She takes care of her father, who has been diagnosed with leukemia. She works, and she has been in counseling. So she hasn't done anything wrong. She's not a danger or a flight risk. And I think there's an appellate issue that we have stated that we will raise, and a potential Supreme Court writ. And I just think it's unfair if there's any chance of the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court seeing it differently, that she served her whole sentence on the chance that it could be reversed. So I'm just asking the court to consider that based on all those grounds and the fact that she hasn't had any violations.
Ms. Marcy.
Well, we do oppose Ms. Gutierrez's release. If this were like a motion to review conditions of release, I certainly would have been able to address my concerns with regard to Ms. Gutierrez and potential release. I'm opposed to it. Does the court want me to go into... I mean, I actually asked Mr. Bowles for proof of Ms. Gutierrez's employment history during the time that the case was pending, and any counseling and treatment that she has completed or participated in. To date, I don't believe he's provided me anything. So while Mr. Bowles wants to make these statements to the court this morning, these are things that I requested from Mr. Bowles, I think, over a week ago. I did it almost immediately after the trial so that I could be thoughtful in terms of coming up with a sentencing recommendation at the sentencing on April 15th, and I've received absolutely nothing. In terms of Ms. Gutierrez's full compliance with her conditions of release, I think there are some arguments to be made there if the court wants me to make them now.
The jury found Ms. Gutierrez-Reed guilty. She is incarcerated at this point. She's facing incarceration time. Keep in mind, there was a death that the jury determined was caused by her. So I'm not releasing her. All right, thank you. We are in recess.
And like I said a while ago, Hannah Gutierrez's sentencing is on April 15. We'll see how that'll go from there. This next story is kind of sad in a way, but I'll let you all be the judge. Anthony Sanchez told officers he didn't know that the gun was loaded when he allegedly pointed it at his friend's chest and pulled the trigger, killing him.
Friends of Dylan Miller tell me they are in complete shock over the shooting that took place in this West Jordan home on Tuesday.
Between two best friends, one is behind bars booked for negligent homicide, the other is being mourned by his family and friends.
I was in disbelief. I couldn't gather words. It's just something you hear of in nightmares.
According to the arrest report, 29-year-old Anthony Sanchez told officers he didn't know the gun was loaded when he pointed it at 27-year-old Dylan Miller. Western police say Sanchez pulled the trigger to be funny for a video.
That's one thing you always should know is your firearm, and that's not a toy. It's really not.
Scotty Johnson has known Miller ever since he was born.
He was just the most genuine, funniest person I've ever met.
Miller had a reputation for maintaining lifelong friendships.
And he was actually one of the first people, one of the first friends that I had actually met.
His selfless qualities were something Jake Ray Solis always admired.
So he cherished every single person that he had ever came in contact with. And I feel like just as a person, that's how everybody will remember him.
He'll also be remembered for his love for softball and for his daughter, born only 6 months ago.
Yeah, I'm going to be there for every step that I possibly can. I want to be there as much as I can and love her and take care of her as much as he wanted to.
Miller's friends designed and are now selling memorial softball jerseys in honor of him. Part of those sales will go towards Miller's family and daughter to help support them during this time. For information on that, you can learn more at fox13now.com. Reporting in West Jordan, Emily Tenser, Fox 13 News, Utah.
And all that was in an attempt to be funny. No one's gonna be laughing, Sanchez, when you're locked up. And my final report goes right back to my old hometown, New York City, where arrests have been made after reports of men punching random women in the face. Videos going viral on social media detailed jarring claims of women being punched in the face by random men on the streets of New York City. NYPD has confirmed the validity of such claims with Scripps News, saying arrests have been made. On March 25th, TikTok user at Hallie Kate detailed her assault in a video that garnered nearly 50 million views. I was just walking and a man came up and punched me in the face, she said, whose name is listed only as Hallie. Oh my God, it hurt so bad I can't even talk. Literally, I fell to the ground, she said. She was visibly shaken and had a large lump on the side of her forehead in the video. In a statement on X, the NYPD said it was aware of a viral video on social media depicting a woman who was randomly assaulted in an unprovoked attack. NYPD told Scripps News the 23-year-old female was hit in the head Monday by an unknown individual and fell to the ground. She suffered injuries to the left side of her face and was treated at a local medical facility. Following an investigation into the attack, police told Scripps News that 40-year-old Skibaki Stora of Brooklyn, right in my old home section. He was arrested and charged with assault. In its statement on social media, the NYPD said they discovered a suspect is a criminal recidivist with an extensive criminal record. Your NYPD detectives were able to identify the man after he was previously arrested for similar attacks, only to be released back onto our streets. This incident will be his third arrest in the past 6 months. And what seems to be an unfortunate pattern, a similar attack happened that same day. In an unrelated incident, a 27-year-old female reported as she was walking on 5th Avenue Monday when an unknown man punched her in the face and injured her right eye. NYPD told Scripps News that 30-year-old Malik Mia was arrested Thursday and charged with assault in connection with that incident. Your officers will continue to remain resilient in their efforts to stop violent criminals, ensuring the safety of our communities, they said in a statement on X. Other New York women have taken to TikTok to share similar stories. Real Housewives of New York star Bethany Frankel spoke on her own experience in a TikTok video. She says she was visiting a bakery a few months ago when a homeless guy randomly hit her in the face. It's a crime spree and I don't understand it. And I'm sorry to all the other women it's happening to, she said. I'm still trying to figure out what in blazes is happening here. They're just getting hit with violent crime just because they can do it. It's sad. Things have to change. Now, earlier I showed you some footage with Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrand, but sometimes you had to wonder, where was Kevin Franke in the mix? Court TV's Julie Grant decided she was going to call him out.
I can't think of anything more innocent than a child. And I can't think of anything more sinister than how Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrand treated Franke's youngest children. Never before seen video evidence has now been released, showing the escape and the rescue of the children RF and EF. It brought me to tears. And I know I'm not alone. It was a house of horrors where those children were handcuffed, starved, and tortured. It is nauseating when you see just how emaciated and physically abused they were at the time that RF had the courage to escape the abuse. What a hero he is. He saved both his own life and his younger sister's. Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrand better thank the police for arresting them, because these two child abusers were on their way to becoming homicide defendants. That's how lethal their abuse of those children was. Now they are locked up for at least 4 years and no more than 30 years. It's up to the parole board. And I sure hope the parole board keeps them in for the max, because 29 years and 364 days won't be enough. And let's talk about Kevin Franke. Where was him? Where was he? Excuse me. Where was the dad? Where was he when this abuse was going on? I'll tell you where he wasn't. He wasn't there to rescue those kids when they needed him the most. Kevin Franke, I call him Kevin the Chameleon. That's what he's like, because you know what he's good at? Changing his story to whatever suits him and his needs at the time. I stand by my wife. I love my wife. Oh, I want a divorce. She should pay the price. No, how about you go have a seat, Kevin Franke? You failed your children miserably. I pray to God those children can heal from the torture that they suffered. And I pray that they are properly taken care of with the love and the respect that they deserve throughout the remainder of their childhood. Children are innocent. Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrand are not. That's why they found their way to prison where they belong. That's my opening statement on this Monday morning. I'm fired up, as you can see.
And can anybody else blame her for being that fired up? Kevin Franke didn't do the job that he was supposed to. He was supposed to, if there's anybody that was supposed to protect his children, it's him. Especially when his wife is the one abusing those children. Speaking of parents, sometimes the parents shouldn't even be the focus of a case sometimes the parents shouldn't even be the focus. I'm gonna go to Julie again to see what she thinks as far as people focusing on the parents instead of focusing on finding Sebastian Rogers.
People should feel the safest in their home. The home is sacrosanct. It is the one place in the whole wide world where we should feel most comfortable and most confident in our safety. And I'm thinking about this morning with the case of Sebastian Rogers. It's been over 1 month since the 15-year-old went missing from his mother's home in Hendersonville, Tennessee. No signs of forced entry at the home, no signs of a burglary or a theft at the home. The child was last seen by his mom at bedtime, just in his normal routine, and then was just gone when she looked in his bedroom at 6:30 a.m. on February 26th. Did he wander off? Did he go outside to meet someone? Sebastian was last seen wearing black sweatpants, a black sweatshirt, glasses, and a small flashlight. The United Cajun Navy has joined in the search. Police, scent dogs, volunteers have all been combing the area. And in the meantime, his mom, Katie, and her husband, Chris Proudfoot, Sebastian's mom and stepdad, are under the microscope big time. And they should be. Police have to look at the people who are closest to Sebastian to see whether they like them for his disappearance. It's not personal whatsoever. It is procedural. And I'll tell you what else is police practice. Not to tell the public everything they know. So at this point, we really have no idea if those detectives like the Proudfoots for this. They aren't saying. Why? Because they're working the case. I saw the interview that the Proudfoots did with Nancy Grace, and it was excellent. She asked them everything you could think of, and they didn't shy away from answering anything. And you know, the thing, my friends, that stood out to me the most, this made me really sad. You know, they talked about how they're leaving their home for the time being. And at first I thought, oh my gosh, how could you leave? How could you leave right now? Sebastian's still missing. I became incredibly suspicious when I heard that. But then I kept watching the interview. And then they shared that it's largely because of safety concerns. They weren't feeling safe in their own home because people in the public who are not privy to anything that law enforcement is doing are making threats against them. And that is terrible. We are all entitled to our opinions, certainly. But threats? against this missing child's mother and stepfather, that is totally unacceptable. Let law enforcement do their job. And if the Proudfoots have any culpability here, law enforcement will figure it out. I promise you. But in the meantime, they deserve to feel safe in their home. And hopefully with all of the wonderful people who are committed to finding Sebastian Rogers, he will be brought home safely. That's my opening statement on this Thursday morning. Let me know if you like it.
I couldn't put that any better than that. It's one thing when we, the public, would consider both mom and stepdad as persons of interest in Sebastian's disappearance. It's a whole other thing to make threats against them. And that is something we definitely don't need to do. Justice for Sebastian? Maybe. But one way or the other, let's find him first. And that's the way I was going to wrap this up earlier if it wasn't for my audio and video issue. Yet and still, I bring it to you now. And I thank you all for watching both halves of One Byte. I want to thank all of you for joining me. If you happen to watch this on the replay, I pray that you do. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. So let's not forget to do what you do. If you like both of those streams, you can follow me on Facebook, X, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, or by email. If you happen to stop in during the replay and you happen to like everything you saw and heard and you want to tip the host, please, I wouldn't mind it. Nothing's obligated, but always appreciated. Thanks, Brittany. You can hit me up on PayPal, EKB316, Cash App, $ EKB316, or Venmo, EB the Last Outlaw. So, like I said, next time, let's do this again, okay? Let's make sure we're seeking justice when we get here. Till then, Ernest Bethea, the Last Outlaw on a Saturday night. Thank you all so much. Until we can do this again, you know what to do. Byte this. Thanks for watching and joining me here at the drama-free true crime destination. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and drop me a comment on this video. And be sure to follow BETHEA'S BYTE Reloaded all over social media. This is BETHEA'S BYTE, and it's reloaded.